Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible. Oi! Get a free audiobook download now and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nothingbutstatic. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can get it across all your devices, your Androids, your Kindles, your iPhones, your laptops. Yeah.
Stop it. Stop. You're about to, list, Sega Mega Drive. I knew where that was going.
About to start listing
Stop
things
that,
start about listing things that the service isn't simply not available on.
Yeah.
But
I know where you were going with that.
Yeah.
It's fine. Stop.
Yeah, so that it's good. It's a free trial and a free book. Get the book. Some good books.
It's a great service. Go check it out.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This week we will be discussing Storm in the Room. Chris, how you feeling? It's a tough one, right?
Feeling good, Dan.
You're feeling good?
Yeah,
You're feeling good after that? You're not feeling emotionally drained?
Well, he gets a mushroom pizza at the end.
He does. Well, which we'll talk about later. There is some deeper significance to the mushroom pizza.
Is there? I did think it was
a little tease for later in the episode. For later in the podcast.
Oh, right. It was quite specific. I did wonder.
No,
I'm feeling good.
I feel like we had to deal with it now. I feel like you've...
Well, kind of, yeah. What's to deal with the mushroom pizza, Dan?
So, in Keystone Motel, he was offered a few different kinds of pizza. One of them, there was a square pizza.
Yes, yeah.
And basically, the response that Greg gave, and I'm bringing up the exact quote now, son, there will come a time in your life when you learn to accept all pizza. And then he wells up. So in this episode, he brings you a mushroom pizza, which Stephen established, I think, in Keystone Motel, that he doesn't like mushrooms at all, and thinks that I'm sure there's a line that suggests that mushroom pizza is some sort of travesty in Stephen's eyes, and he accepts that pizza.
I did think it was weird as well because it looks like a pepperoni pizza.
It really did.
It doesn't look like mushroom at all, which made that whole thing even more bizarre to me.
There was one angle where it was clearly a mushroom. It was the shape of a mushroom, but when it was completely flat in the box, the mushroom shape sort of... It's only when you see it from top down that it's clearly mushroom shaped, the things on it. But from the side angle that we had when we initially saw it, it did look... you couldn't 100% say it was pepperoni, but you also couldn't 100% say it was mushroom. That was the issue. I like that.
Most definitely.
I like that a really sort of emotionally charged episode, and we've gone straight to the mushroom pizza. We are the worst. We are bad at this, Chris. Okay. Is it time that we just accept that we're shit at this?
So in this episode, Stephen and Connie are hanging out, and then Connie's getting panicked because her mum's not there. Mm-hmm. Stephen and Connie have gone from every sort of time-wasting game they can. They've built a deck of cards. They've seemingly played Scrabble. They're playing Mad Libs, is it called?
Mad Libs.
Mad Libs. Then Connie's mum appears. It was no big disaster, no big gem stuff. Don't worry about it, guys. She was just hospital working delays. Mm-hmm. So Connie heads off, and Stephen sort of, seemingly by this, is a bit down. It's sort of making him think about his mum, and he's trying to avoid looking at her photo, her painting, but he can't help it. He goes outside, a storm starts, his macaroni cheese looks gross after it. There's all sort of water in there and stuff. So
do we need to start a food podcast? Is that what this is?
I think that's what's happening. He says, I just wanna know the real you. Shh. Door opens. Shit. Rose's room. So he goes in Rose's room, and then we get this sort of fake room version of his mum. They play catch. They play football. They have a nice moment. Stephen gets out his phone to take a picture, and in quite a powerful moment, he realizes that his phone shows the truth, which is it's just him in the room. Rose isn't really there. So he gets angry about her, and he asks some kind of big questions. She's not really who she says she was. She banished bismuth because he wanted to smash diamonds, yet she then smashed pink diamond. We got, all sorts of stuff going down. Did she only have him so he could deal with her stuff, not her?
That's a really powerful idea. Like the idea that he thinks.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it. Like, and I was like, as soon as he said it, I was like, oh shit, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's
like, was she escaping her problems by becoming him? Certainly a thought. We'll go into more detail afterwards, but finish the intro, Chris. I didn't mean to derail you. I'm just excited to talk about this one.
That's all right. So then Rose sort of says that, that's not true. I said in the video it wasn't true. They share a moment. He goes outside the room, and he's sort of seemingly still feels alone. And that's when the Gems and Greg appear with the aforementioned mushroom pizza. And Stephen wells up. And you get a sense of him kind of going, well, I've got these guys, I've got family. A bit Fast and Furious, he's got family. And then it ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happened. What more do you want from me, Dan?
I mean, nothing. That was perfect, Chris.
I really liked it. I thought it was deep. I thought it was emotional. I thought they used the time very well.
Agreed.
I thought it went quite in depth. I thought it was quite, it was heavy, but it was addressing some stuff that we know we need to address. They sort of seem to be building this idea that Stephen's about to implode at any moment because of all the emotions, a la Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix. And yeah, I thought it was quite powerful. I thought that it's one of those things where there are specific scenes. I mean, the Connie's mum plot serves a purpose, but I think this is more of an episode where you go, oh, that idea is brilliant, that speech is brilliant, as opposed to the whole thing, having a clear or particularly impressive beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
But the stuff it does, is so kind of gripping and real. It's very similar to Infinity War. Like, you know what I mean?
Wait, sorry. What?
Just in the way it makes you, it's quite deep. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay.
And like, I don't think Infinity War is an amazing film, but if you judge it on the traditional beginning, middle, end, character development kind of stuff, it so depends on you having seen the other films.
Yeah, so you're saying this episode doesn't have a standard narrative structure, but it doesn't matter because it's giving.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I suppose it does.
It does technically have a beginning and a middle and end, but what I mean is this isn't one of those episodes where you go, as a complete piece of television, that was a marvel. This is an episode where you go, fuck, I love the stuff when he's in the room. And I think the stuff at the beginning really informs that. But I think it's got some that's I think my point. Like, I don't think okay, so this is better. When I think of Infinity War, I don't think of the complete thing. I think of moments, and I mean that as a compliment. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think when I look back on this episode, and I suspect when you look back on this episode, it wouldn't surprise me if this started on your rewatch and you were like, oh yeah, this begins with Connie and her mum. I forgot that. Like, do you see what I'm saying? You look back on this moment and think
I forgot the extent of that. No, 100%, because when I sat down to watch it, I remembered that it started with Connie having a moment with her mum that got Stephen thinking about his mum and then led to the room. But I didn't realise how much of the episode it took up. So it starts...
Yeah, you didn't remember the ad-libs.
Yeah, I didn't remember Mad Libs, that's for sure. And I didn't remember how long they spent just sort of exploring that, like exploring Connie's anxiety. And don't get me wrong, it's all wonderful stuff. It's certainly not a criticism from me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not criticising. I'm just saying I think you think of
this
in moments.
This episode, like the thing you come out of it remembering deeply is the room, and particularly like how this episode is such a ride emotionally for me, because he goes in the room and it's the first time he sees his mum. And can I just say something as well? Zach Callison, the voice of Stephen, deserves whatever awards you can throw at him for this episode, because he has so much to do. Because he has to go in that room and make you, the audience, feel that nervous sort of glee he feels when Stephen first walks in that room and his mum basically appears, you know. And the way he's like talking to her so softly and sort of awkwardly, because he's realizing he doesn't really know her, but then he's realizing she's not real, and it's all really mixed up, and he has to achieve all of that legitimately and sincerely, and he does, because none of that stuff works without that voice acting. None of that stuff. You don't get you don't get half the sweetness of that moment and the power of that moment of him actually seeing a representation of his mother after all this time and interacting with a representation of his mother. And the tragedy of, like, he just wants to play. Like, he just wants to play video games and spend time with her. It's amazing to me that the first thing he doesn't do is go, what the fuck? Instead, it's, should we get to know each other? Should we hang out? You know,
yeah.
And that's adorable and heartbreaking. And Zach Callison's voice acting sells it. And the moment when he's all curled up in her lap, it's like it's really powerful. And then he has to carry the shift from that sort of quite sad and sweet and heartbreaking scenario to, I mean, for lack of a better word, like anger, like legitimate feeling like he's been wronged, and in a way he has, because he's always been left in the dark. He's clearly proven himself capable of knowing answers, and yet he is constantly being denied them. And he's starting to realize that, and he's starting to get frustrated with that. And he also feels like even he was sold a false bill of goods with his mum, because they spent years telling him how great she was, and the more he learns, the less great she seems. So he's not just angry at his mum for being theoretically a hypocrite if all the information he has is accurate, but he's also angry at the Crystal Gems because that expectation was set up by them. It's like being told a movie is the greatest movie ever and it being an absolute pile of shit. Do you know what I mean? Like if you'd heard nothing about, I'm trying to think of like a really, really bad movie now, like The Happening, you know, the M. Night Shyamalan one. If I told you it was the greatest movie ever made, and I said it sincerely, and you'd heard nothing else about it, Chris, and you want to watch that movie, you'd be partly pissed at me because I'd created an expectation that,
or I'd be pretending it was genius because I didn't want to look stupid because I'd missed it.
Yeah, that's also a possibility. But my point is, like, Zach Callison's shift when that happens, because all of these feelings are so mixed up and so complex and so layered, it's not as simple as he's happy, then he's sad, then he's angry. It's not that simple at all. It's all mixed up, and the way he conveys every line, and obviously it helps that the script is great too, and the big speech, once he starts to get angry, is also really powerfully written. Obviously, that all really helps to sell that, but legitimately, Zach's performance is stunning here and really pushes the emotions that are involved in that entire sequence. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, if they'd have just opened it with him looking at that picture of his mum saying, you know, I want answers, the room opening, the sequence in the room, and then him coming out, and then his family returning, I would have been perfectly happy, even if the episode would have been 7 minutes long. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's great stuff.
And I suppose in a weird way, then that's kind of maybe what you were getting at, in that the Connie stuff is really, it does lead into it, but you could actually remove it, and this episode still works just fine.
Yeah, I think the Connie stuff adds to it. I think what's nice about the Connie stuff is it adds to it in the most subtle way, because you know what's going on, and you know that them having such a good relationship is weighing on his mind. But you never have Stephen say, why can't you be like Connie's mum? Like, and I like that. I like how subtle they've played that.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice touch. We got some good gags out of it, like, oh, so he's back from the spa. No, I said space. Well, and you kind of...
Well, I loved more about that than just that. I mean, that's funny too, but like what I loved about that is, like, it's reaffirming, because we haven't really seen them interact since... I don't think we've seen them interact since Connie came clean with her parents.
No, I don't think so, no.
And it's a really nice moment of, no, she was honest with them, like re-establishing, no, Connie has been honest with her parents since Nightmare Hospital, basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big deal for her character. And like, they didn't take up a whole episode to sort of demonstrate that, but they definitely they definitely took a moment to sort of hint at that here. They also made a really great callback, I don't know if you noticed, Chris, to mindful education.
Yes, she starts doing the techniques. I did notice that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she's panicking about her mum and going through all that stuff, she uses the techniques Garnet taught her in mindful education. And I just think that's, again, like you said about the other thing being quite subtle, not directly referenced, but it's there, like Stephen saying, why can't I have a simple relationship with my mother like Connie does? And there's almost a slight bit of jealousy in there, almost, because it's just so simple and straightforward for Connie in his eyes. We all know it's not. No one's situation is as it's the grass is always greener situation. But as subtle as that is, the mindful education stuff is, again, you just see Connie strike the pose, and you know what's happening.
You know what she's doing.
It's really subtle, but really clever.
I think one of my other favourite subtleties in the episode is the unnerving that they build in the montage where they're playing together. Where, I think, for example, just because it's such a direct comparison because it literally contains a football scene. Guardians 2, in order to portray this sense of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, in order to portray this sense of something's not quite right here, they played it for comedy and went really over the top, and I think have a montage to Father and Son by Cat Stevens. I think I might be remembering that wrong.
No, I think that's exactly. They certainly use that song. I think they might use that song at the end rather than in the middle.
Right.
I don't want to spoil it, but I think Father and Son comes up at the more emotional end point than the middle point that you're referring to, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. But they do some sort of song, and it's very, hey, I'm playing with my dad. My dad's the coolest. And what I like is that they could have, and you get a sense of fucking something's wrong.
It's eerie and it's off, and you can't put your finger on why. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's. I think they really walked a tightrope with it, because if someone was to sit here going, I thought that scene was more trying to be cheesy funny, I'd be like, yeah, I can see why you'd get that interpretation as well. I think both are correct.
It got laughs of derision when I saw it in the cinema.
Yeah, same. It got kind of like, oh god, when I saw it.
Yeah.
But I think with this, because they don't do that, because they don't do the music, because they just have it build and they're playing all these things, and the way, these so beautifully subtle way that Rose is talking, but so clearly talking as Stephen would have her talk, which is most beautifully done when she says, no, of course it's not how I feel. You saw the video, you believed that, didn't you? You know that was real. And he says, yeah, I know that was real. The cleverness of that, because that he did see the video. He is trying to make sense of it in his head. And he's making her say that. It's still comforting. It's still effective, but it is something he knows. And the way she's like, oh, all sport is wonderful. It's funny, but it also, again, is Stephen's idea and the picture Stephen has built of Rose. And the subtle way she talks, and it almost comes across like it's Stephen doing an impression of her, but coming out through a figure that looks like her.
Mm-hmm.
The way you're going, it's Stephen, not actually her. And the way that you're conflicted by, fundamentally, it's Stephen and his mum interacting. Awesome. What a great piece of, stuff for the fans. What a great visual. But then it's got this eerie substance to it, because it's all in Stephen's head. And I just thought that was really powerful. Yeah. And such a great way of giving us that moment. Because I don't, one of my favourite things said by Stephen Moffat, writer of showrunner of Doctor Who for series 5 to 10, is his first series finale, The Big Bang. He has like all the villains, and they basically line up, and then they succeed their plan. They bugger off. You don't see them interacting a lot. And he basically was asked about it. He was like, once you've got that image, once you've got the lineup poster, you're done. There's nothing else for them to do. So, once we've got Stephen and Rose, once we've got that image, and once we're over the, oh God, it's Stephen and Rose, it's right down to, it's not really Rose. We all know this is a bit odd. Let's play with that. Yeah. They play on the more interesting thing as opposed to the thing that you want to see as a fan of the show and as a fan of Stephen. And I think that's a really brave move because it's leaning on a concept and an idea that's quite big and that you have to get your head round. And it, much like Infinity War, it all works because of the 4 seasons worth of backstory. You show this episode to someone who's only seen 5 episodes of this show, less than 10, less than double figures, they're not going to get all that. They're not going to understand that. But because they've laid the groundwork so beautifully, this episode and those moments really pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, I echo all of what you just said. I think that's a big part of the reason this episode is one of the, is a favorite of mine. I think all the things that you sort of just talked about like lead to the emotional weight of it and the way it all sort of comes together so cleverly, and it really does. It is perfectly pitched. Like they've executed this idea perfectly, and there's an unease to it the whole time but it all makes sense. Like this Rose doesn't say anything that Stephen couldn't come up with. And
no,
there's something, and there's sort of, they play with, it's almost like they're playing with the uncanny valley of it. Like, it's not right, and you can't put your finger on why.
Yeah, and the other genius thing about that is he accuses her of stuff.
Yes.
And he brings stuff up, but they don't at any point he doesn't at any point outright ask, why did you smash Pink Diamond? Why did you do this?
Because he knows.
And she doesn't at any point offer answers because he doesn't know those answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet. Literally.
Yeah, he knows he knows she can't answer those questions.
Yeah. Everything she says makes sense for him to think. It's really, really subtle and clever. And it gives you him having a conversation with his mum in a way that makes sense and adds value. Because I don't love, like, This Is Us has done it twice, once with a wedding and once when a character was high, where they have created scenes where you get the poster, you get all the monsters lined up, you get characters who can't be together, and it's cool and awesome. And I think the wedding one was particularly effective, but the one where the character was high, I'm just a bit like, well, it's dream. Listeners of Fringe Observers especially will know this. Like, I'm not a big one for dream sequences and stuff which is fake. And usually the justification is, yeah, but the character learnt something, or yeah, but it made them overcome that thing in the episode, and yeah. And I'm kind of usually like, okay, fine, and but I always kind of feels like, yeah, the character learned something. That's not why you've fucking done it. You've done it so that you can put it in the trailer. You've done it so that people will go, oh, it's this character and this character. I never thought I'd see that. Cool. Here, I learned something about the character. I think this is the best use I've ever seen of doing something which means two characters who shouldn't be able to interact because one of them's dead or whatever are interacting. I think this is the most genuine use of it, and I think that's because of the 4 seasons worth of build up. But like, it is the most accepting I've ever been of what is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a dream sequence, something a bit trippy.
I think it's because it works in context of the show. Like it's because of the. I think
it's the 4 seasons build up.
It's partly how it's written. It's partly how it's 3 parts in my opinion that make it work in this case, where it may have failed for you in other instances. Yeah, 4 seasons of build up, So it's it's developing ideas that have been on the cooker for a while. It's executed perfectly within its episode. Like the writers have been subtle about it rather than hitting you on the head with it. And then I think the third thing is it's actually in context of the show as well. So that conversation's really happening. It's not just the show sort of visualizing the thought process of a character. Instead, it's the room's making it happen. The room, in terms of it's actually in show explained how that's happening. Physically. It
has to develop it has to develop Stephen, because fundamentally Stephen's the one doing it. So,
exactly, but also like there is a tangibility to it as well. So because it's not all happening in Stephen's head in some way, whether being high or imagination or whatever the excuse you've seen for these sort of things, he has to actually deal with his feelings like in a more real, in a more sort of forward way, and express himself more forwardly. So because of the sort of just the basic setup of this episode, we're in a situation where that's like, we've learned a lot, and it feels more tangible, more valuable than what sometimes characters will learn in episodes where they do that sort of thing. And again, I think that's partly the show has such a great premise that the setup, you can actually have a room where this is possible, and that's excuse me, all really, really cool. So yeah, I think it's one of the stronger ones, I would say.
What other than the mushroom pizza? What, any notes? Any cool stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few little bits that I liked in this episode that I picked up on. So, for example, Connie's answers when he's asking her for words, for his Mad Lib. If you actually fill her words into the story, it makes a coherent story. She's not thinking about that, but it actually works. I'll read it out to you with her words inserted. The case of the accidental mishap. So those last two words were her. One day a message unexpectedly arrived at my door. When I finished reading it, I just crashed. There was a big explosion causing trouble downtown. So
that works.
So like, I love that like Connie's random words fit into the story in a way that make it not so much a Mad Lib, more of a slightly esoteric story.
I think what's better about that is the notion that they're not random words. The notion that Connie is so clever that even when panicking, she is still panicking in context of the game.
Maybe, yeah. That's also quite good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So obviously the episode's title, besides literally referring to the climax of the episode, which by the way we haven't talked about, but visually, holy shit, this episode is stunning. The room and the way it's drawn and the way it shifts when he starts getting madder and it gets sort of dark and cloudy and for lack of a better word, stormy. That's all really cool. But what I also like is that the title "Storm in the Room" is also sort of apparently sort of more of a reference to the phrase "to storm out of the room," an idiom sort of meaning to angrily leave, which I suppose that's kind of what happens throughout the episode. He does become angry. I think that's really clever. Obviously, this is the first time we should talk a little bit about the black void. I like the idea that room is actually just a weird empty black space where everything else is just sort of projected mentally. As the camera revealed, it was just him and everything else was just sort of dark and non-existent. That was something I noted down. I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting interpretation, because haven't we seen it before where other people have gone into the room?
Yeah, other people. Connie went in with him, and it was. But I don't think they got their cameras out at any point there.
No, but the notion that because it all in their heads would imply, I always viewed it as the room was transforming, like actually physically transforming. I think if you view it as all in their heads, it becomes a bit weird that they were able to share a vision.
Can I adjust how I phrased it to make that work a little better?
Please do.
It's Rose's room, so it's what's in Stephen's head is what you see manifest in front of you. So if you go in, you can't go in without Stephen. You go in with Stephen. Another person couldn't go in on their own. If they did, it would probably just be a black room. You go in with Stephen, and whatever he's manifesting, you also see.
Okay.
That's how I like to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't they do that episode where he got stuck in there and it all went sort of haywire as well because he imagined too much and the room couldn't keep up with it?
He was imagining Connie at that point, yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy episode.
And then he has to
No,
try and find real
we
Connie.
might be mixing up two here. There's one where he gets stuck in the room on his own, and he meets his dad, and his dad goes all glitchy and weird, and the whole town sort of because you think he's escaped the room, but he hasn't. He's now imagining the whole town too. Do you remember? Then there's another one where he goes. Then there's another episode where he goes in with Connie, and they recreate the ending of her favorite book, but change it to suit her, and he makes a Connie.
Yeah, he keeps.
And that goes mental too.
Yeah, he keeps changing it. Yeah.
Yeah, he has not had good times in this room. He needs to stop coming in this room.
He needs to stop going in.
He's
Basically,
had 3 trips, and they have been all
been a disaster.
Yeah, let's be honest. One of the games that Stephen owns is called Cosmic Engagement, which is a reference to the real life board game Cosmic Encounter. What else? Oh yeah, I don't know if you picked up on this. I suspect you didn't because, as we've established, animation makes your heart grow oh so cold. But when Rose holds the football for Stephen to kick, he goes to kick it, she pulls it away, and he sort of does a weird backflip in the air and then lands with all the funny sound effects. That is a direct reference to Peanuts, the Charlie Brown cartoons.
Okay, cool.
The way they're one of the characters. What's that? The female character that's always mean to Charlie Brown, but I suspect she's got a Helga style crush on him. I can't remember. There's a girl character that's always mean to him, and he goes to kick the ball. She pulls it away, and Charlie Brown spins in the air and then lands on his face or back. It's like it's animated identically to that.
Okay, cool.
So there you go. Apparently, the promotional art for this episode was done in a Peanuts art style as well. Although I haven't seen that. There's a link here. I'm going to click and look at it. Oh, look at that!
Sounds quite cool.
Oh, that's adorable. Okay, so if anyone is interested in this. It's on the Steven Universe wiki on the Storm in the Room page. You click on the trivia, find that piece of trivia, click on it. There's a link to it. Basically, it's like it's Steven Universe Charlie Brownified, and he's sat looking sad, and there's like a storm cloud over him, raining specifically on him. It's really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll send it to you for later, Chris. I don't think you don't have access to things I send you while we're on the podcast, do we?
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, not easily, and I wouldn't want to go on the Wikipedia page just in case.
No, I've just sent you the link to the image now. But so cool. you can click on that later. With safety. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, we should also talk a little bit about some of the stuff earlier in the episode. Obviously, it seems to take place directly after New Crystal Gems. They seem to reference the car wash being still fixed, and Stephen starts in his outfit from the zoo. I thought it was neat that they showed him sort of getting out of that outfit and like. Sort of shuffling back to his star ensemble.
Yeah, trying to like get on with his day and cook macaroni cheese and stuff, and have a shower or whatever. Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch.
And then the other one, obviously, Lonely Blade makes a reappearance, but this time in an arm wrestling simulator game. I thought
that was quite cool. I like consistent things like that.
Yeah, it's always Lonely Blade, but a different sort of element to the franchise. Now there's a Lonely Blade fucking video game for arm wrestling as well. What else? Oh yeah, Rose is. I don't know if you noticed, Chris, but when Rose catches the football, the face she makes is the exact same face Steven makes in Giant Woman when like that sort of like starry eyed like Giant Woman sort of face.
Oh, that's cool. No, I hadn't noticed that.
No, it's neatly animated. Actually, it's really good.
Yeah. Well, like you say, the animation across this episode is fantastic. I think the voice actor for Steven deserves a hell of a lot of credit. But those animators as well really pulled out the stops.
Yeah, and as we've already complimented enough, but the writers. I mean, I think this was written. I think this is storyboarded by Jeff Liu. Who's worked on some of the better episodes of this show, generally speaking, and this is a corker. This is a good one. I remember when we first started doing this, I was talking to a lot of Steven Universe fans more frequently because they were sort of commenting on videos and on Reddit threads about this podcast and stuff. And people kept saying, "Oh, I'm really excited for Chris to get to this, this, and this." And I remember one of the first episodes I was talking with people, I was being excited about showing you was this one because it sort of just happened, so it was fresher in my memory than some of the other pivotal ones. But I just remember thinking, God, one day I'm going to get to sit down and like talk to Chris about what I just saw. Like there was a weird excitement about it. So that's why I suppose this week. Go on.
I hope I haven't disappointed.
No. It was awesome. Your feelings on it pretty much echo mine. We're not always 100% on the same page, so some of these episodes end up being a bit more back and forth. But this one was more of a
of a love fest.
Well, a little bit, but it was also like it wasn't really a back and forth as it was like because I would say something and then you wouldn't really have a counterpoint to it because you agreed. So then you would say something that you liked about the episode, and I would not have a counterpoint to that because I agreed. And it was just sort of like it wasn't a back and forth as these episodes tend to be, right? It wasn't so much a debate as it was like so two people getting occasional monologues to describe what was great about this episode.
Two big impassioned speeches about the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that it's really it's hard. It is hard to judge these sometimes, though, with this show, because it's hard. Like with Fringe, I felt it was fairer with Fringe. And correct me if you disagree with this, Chris. I felt when we were watching Fringe that it was fairer for me to say, I have to judge this episode on its own merits. Yes, it achieved some stuff for the wider plot, but as a single episode, X, Y, and Z. I just don't feel like the rules like that apply on Steven Universe. I don't feel like I can fairly do that with Steven Universe because of the way it's building its stories.
Yeah, well, I don't think just the way it's building its story, but they're only 11 minutes long, so you gotta. I think you give them a pass for that as well. It's a quarter of the length of Fringe Observers, so if they want to do something that's so mythology based, you're just kind of like, well, of course they only had 11 minutes. That's fine.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, there's partly that. That has got to be a chunk of it. I also think that they've established from day one that like any episode could go from being a townie episode to a mythology episode in the snap of a finger. Whereas I think Fringe started as episode of the week and became more mythology as it went on. So then you started questioning the way they were balancing it. Whereas this show is weirdly, with the exception of the first sort of 20 episodes, which didn't have hardly any mythology in them until we got to sort of Mirror Gem, Motion Gem.
I agree.
Like, besides those episodes, this show has always had since episode 20 up to now, 120, because that's where we are, but I think we're at 118, 119 today? No, this is 100. This is 120.
No, it is. Yeah, you're right. I was going to say it's 120.
Yeah, we did 119 the other day. Yeah, so this is 120. So we are now sort of 100 episodes on from that point. And
that's crazy.
That's consistent. Like the show has had a consistent level of developing the plot, and it doesn't always
back and forth.
Yeah, because people don't always feel that way about the show because they feel like, it's because once the show. Okay, so this is a weird thing. People always think that this show has gotten way more mythology based. I don't think it has. I just think the stakes on the mythology stuff are higher now. So like, it was a huge deal to meet Lapis in the context of that moment because it was a new gem we hadn't met and we hadn't met any other gems yet, and it was when we learned that the gems were aliens, and like when we learned that, you know what I mean, like, and then you look at like Jailbreak and we learned that Garnet is a fusion, and like and that there are these other gems from Homeworld that have come to sort of to investigate what's happening on Earth, and like the stakes of that felt so high, and every time this show does more mythology stuff, it seems to go bigger, which makes you feel like the show is more top heavy for its mythology. It's not so much that it's top heavy. It's always been doing mythology stuff. It's just the mythology's gotten so deep now. The stakes feel way higher than they did back then.
And it's like before, because they were introducing you to stuff, you only had to think about that element of the mythology. But because the backstory, when they do something of mythology in your head, you're going, oh, this links to this, and this links to this, and that explains this, and therefore it feels bigger because your context for that and the way you have to contextualize it is so much bigger.
Yeah, totally agree. I thought you were going to talk for longer, so I started sipping my drink then, Chris. You caught me out.
Oh, sorry. I cut you off. I apologise.
That's upsetting. You cut off me having a sip of my tea. You should be ashamed.
I'm sorry, mate.
I just think that's really, really.
I
think that's really rude. That's all.
I got distracted then by the person opposite returned, or someone just went in with a bike, but just left it out. And I've just spent the last 5 minutes going, "You gonna come put the bike away? Like, what if I'm about to watch a theft? You know what I mean?" I was like, I don't want to be thinking, do I say who stole the bike? Like, because this bike could get nicked, but they have now returned and put the bike away.
I mean, you live in. It's Berkshire, right? I'm not going to give you an exact town, but you're in Berkshire, right?
Yeah, but mate, stuff goes down. Bikes get nicked.
Yeah, it doesn't seem likely. I literally got a letter through my door because I now live in Zone 2 in London, which for those who don't know is London's zoned, the very, very central London, Zone 1. Slightly outside of the very central London is Zone 2, and it goes out as far as Zone 6. I used to be Zone 6. I'm now Zone 2, and I got a letter under my door the other day from the police, like, yeah, there's been 2 break-ins in the buildings directly next to yours. Keep your eye on your windows.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I feel like I would have. I feel like I'd have had more cause to be concerned about someone's bike going missing. Although,
yeah, but it's not a competition, is it?
Yeah, but I just feel like you live in Berkshire. Like, I don't think anyone's.
Just don't fucking need to say it. I'm not like you live in London. Like,
no, but I just
stop
mean like
putting the emphasis on bark.
I just mean like. I just mean from a perspective of like the likelihood of thievery. Like, I have nothing against Berkshire. It's a nice, sort of quiet, sort of sensible, stable, like the community. That's why it's almost a compliment, really. In terms of the likelihood of someone's bike getting nicked, then I'm like, yeah, but you live in Berkshire. Like, come on.
But they were stop with that. Yeah, but they by leaving their bike unlocked, they increased the risk. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, but you literally went, am I about to witness a theft? Like, did you...
You know what I'm like. Yeah, I'm a paranoid man, Dan.
You are a paranoid man. We've learnt this, haven't we?
Mm.
We have learnt this in the past. Okay, fair enough. Mm.
Cool. There we go.
I just want to make it... Can I remake it clear that I don't think there's anything wrong with Berkshire? I just think, like, in the terms of you assuming that something's going to get nicked, then I have to sort of be like, come on, mate, it's Berkshire.
Dan hates Berkshire.
I hate it. It's my least favourite place in the country.
How can
that be true when Blackpool exists? It's just not. It's just,
what you got against Blackpool?
Have you ever been to Blackpool? Sorry, Cesspool.
Yeah,
Cesspool. I gotta call it by its real name.
Mine and Jess's first weekend away ever was in Blackpool.
Well, I'm sure you had a wonderful time in the on the beach covered in litter, or the water that has a strange dark tone to it that you sort of think, I don't know what's in this water, but it doesn't seem like it's water.
Well, we didn't go in the sea. We're not
lunatics. Yeah, you didn't want to gain, like, you didn't want to get bit by like a radioactive dolphin or something. We went up. I don't think we went up the tower. We went up something that was tall. Maybe we went up the tower. I don't know, but possibly actually. Yeah, I think so. Or then
yeah.
When I was younger, we used to go there a fair bit because one of my great nan, bless her, she used to love it up there. So we'd go, but we go and they'd turn on their Christmas lights, which is like Blackpool Illuminations. It's like their famous lights, but they're shit. And it's like, why are these lights famous? And like, they were famous to the point that when I would leave lights on in the house as a kid that I wasn't using, my dad would come in, all typical and northern, and be like, what do you think this is? Blackpool Illuminations? He's turning off all the lights around the house. Also, he became Peter Kay for like 30 seconds. And he turned off all, go around turning off the lights. It was like, and like to the point, so that's how famous they are. But they were shit. We go every year, like, are you looking forward to seeing the lights? Yeah, I guess. It's like, they were terrible.
I think you should appreciate family time more, Dan. But
I mean, I just, you know what it is? I just don't like the place. So there you go. That was it. I tell you what, that was a hell of a tangent.
Yeah, that was quite. We've been quite focused all episode, and now you're just ranting about Berkshire and Blackpool.
Well, now to be honest here, again, not that fussed about Berkshire now. It's my rage has been focused.
Oh right, I see what you mean. You focus more your anger on
Blackpool. I've been reminded of how much I hate Blackpool. I wasn't, to be honest here, as well. I will say actually, and for another place beginning with B, I have an interesting relationship with the town we went to university in Bournemouth.
You're not a fan of that either?
No, I see there are parts and elements of it. I love some of the best times of my life were down in that, down there. But there were so many things also that I hated about Bournemouth. Like I have such a conflicted relationship with Bournemouth that I honestly cannot express it properly to you.
It is a town, like someone said, I think it might have even been Jess, like we're going there for a gig in next year, and someone I remember talking about it with someone, and they were like, oh, you must have you must walk around with such affection, and I was like, I do, but it's weird. Like I've revisited, like I have a lot of affection for Cardiff, and I walk around Cardiff or certainly see like the residential areas of Cardiff where my friends lived, and like I feel something. With Bournemouth, I go back and like I know I'm meant to feel, and I feel something to some degree with Bournemouth, but I kind of like I walk around going, I know the town, but I don't know the town. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't. Whenever I've gone back to Bournemouth, I've not felt a sense of like I think when you know a place, you walk round like you know the place. You kind of like, but I'd never. When I've returned to Bournemouth, I haven't walked round.
You
with
felt
that
kind
sense
of weirdly
like,
cold about it. I think
I've just not felt. I've not felt like it was in any way home. And I think sometimes when even if you don't live in a place, if it was at one point home, and I think if something is at one point home, it usually a little bit of it stays home to some degree.
Do you think that's because the place you go to live that's university, you meet all these people there, and you've all travelled there to go to that university, and then when you leave, all those people leave. So the thing that makes it feel like home
that's very
was the people, and they're no longer there. So now it's just buildings that you vaguely recognise and streets that you've walked on before.
That's possible.
And also, in Bournemouth, they've got a road called Post Office Road, but the post office on it closed years ago. Still called Post Office Road. Fucks me off every time I visit. I walk past it just going, you piece of shit of a road.
And that just upsets you.
It does. And that moved while I was there. So my first and maybe second year at uni, it was on that road, and then it got moved into the back of the WH Smiths in the centre of town. And I was so angry because I was just because I was like, "What? You've got to rename the road now. Rename the road. Don't call it Post Office Road. That's just."
You write letters to the council and
I'm there trying to become the local MP just so I can fix it, and that's my one campaign promise. I'm like, I will change the name of that road. By hook or by crook. Anyway.
Cool.
So
right.
That's Storm in the Room, and Storm in Berkshire, and Blackpool, and Bournemouth. And Storm in Places title B. It's beginning with B. Oh, dear Lord. Anyway.
You got a problem with Bedwin, Dan?
Never been. Never been.
To be fair, I think Bedwin's in Berkshire, so...
Well, same issue. No, I'm kidding.
Bognor Regis?
Let's not talk about Bognor.
Bognor Regis is if tuna is a poor man's salmon, then Bognor Regis is a poor man's Bournemouth, and you know our feelings on Bournemouth. So,
what I love is that this is such a conversation that makes zero sense to listeners from any country that isn't the UK.
Yeah, and I don't know how many how many UK listeners we actually have for this. So, I had a bad experience with Bognor Regis, so I went on a 3-day blind date, which is never a great idea. But
a 3-day blind. Did I know about this?
Yeah, you knew about it at the time. Yeah, you've probably forgotten the deets. But,
dear. At some point, we've got to tell that story because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, we won't do it now because it'll take up another 15 minutes. But next Q&A, if someone remembers to ask, Chris, can you tell us about the 3-day blind date?
Seems like such a bad idea. You want to get out. You want an out on a blind date. 3 days. That's insane.
Oh mate, I ended up leaving. I ended up leaving on the 3rd day still, but I left before my mate did. I got out. I got a train home. Met up with my friend, had a cup of tea.
Right. Well,
not a crime.
We'll come back to that. I feel like we're just gonna. Yeah. Anyway,
it was a weird. Yeah, it's a weird story.
That sounds amazing. And the fact that I don't remember it means I get to experience it all from new.
It will slowly come back to you.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Awesome. All right. Well, there's that for a future Q&A. But thanks very much for listening, guys. I hope we did Storm in the Room justice. It is a great episode. Sadly, we have something very different to tackle next week, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's we'll call it a controversial one.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you the title now, and I very quickly want your reaction. Your just initial gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
The episode is called Rock Ronaldo.
Oh God. I assume Ronaldo forms a rock band. Well, actually, that sounds pretty good.
I know. When you said that, I went, I think I'd watch that.
Yeah, that sounds
amazing.
That sounds better than what we're gonna get.
Oh, definitely, definitely. No, it's a controversial episode. In that it's like any Ronaldo episode by naturally divides the audiences. And historically, me and you have not been huge fans of Ronaldo as a character. We've had mixed sort of reactions to him in the past. I think we both thought Rising Tides Crashing Skies was fine. But a lot of his other episodes we've had issues with. So yeah, cool. We will come back to that next week. So that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you next time as we discuss Rocknaldo.